The total number of ballot papers counted was 33,577,342. The total number of votes cast in favour of Remain was 16,141,241. The total number of votes cast in favour of Leave was 17,410,742.
When back in 2016, almost 52% of the British voters voted in favour of Britain leaving the European Union, almost no one could have predicted that in a matter of 2 years, secret Brexit plans behind closed doors would be drawn to confront a full-scale anarchy. It is now revealed that staff working for the Brexit Secretary David Davis are preparing government for a Mad Max-style chaos post-Brexit, which warns of an acute shortage of medicine, food and fuel in Britain in just a matter of a fortnight. The fear has intensified Britain's negative attitudes towards Brexit. Since the referendum in 2016, there have been at least 13 polls asking the same question. Would you vote the same again, or was the country right to vote for Brexit? In 11 out of 13 polls, results concluded that the majority in the UK do not want Brexit. The voting intention trend clearly shows that except for the first 3 weeks post-referendum, the margins between the Remain camp and the Brexiteers are getting bigger and in favour of the Remain camp. In less than 9 months, Britain has to finalise all arrangements with the European bloc after the divorce, but the Prime Minister, who once called herself a bloody difficult woman, hasn't been able to assure even her cabinet of her competency in striking a good deal with the EU. The so-called difficult woman may face a strong rebellion at the very heart of her party, with over 50 MPs ready to block any attempts to crash Britain out of the EU without a deal. The Prime Minister would be thwarted by her own MPs if she tried to carry out her threat to pursue a no-deal exit if the negotiations fail.
Rebels have now accused the Prime Minister of backtracking on promises she made earlier this week when she agreed a compromise amendment would be tabled in the Lords. That promise enabled the government to stave off defeat in the crucial Commons vote. Our political correspondent Laura Bundock is here. Laura, it looks that this week a showdown was averted but certainly not killed off. What happens now?
Yeah, I think averted but just delayed simply.
I don't think anyone in the Conservative Party, I don't think anyone in any political party wants to become embroiled in a civil war. But there are very, very powerful dissenting opinions within the Conservative Party over Europe. Europe is a subject that most Conservatives, the overwhelming majority of Conservatives, feel extremely passionate about, be it in the Brexit camp or in the Remain camp. And Theresa May is not just having to grapple with the uncertainties, the challenges following the victory of the Brexit camp in the referendum, she's also trying to prevent an outbreak of civil war within her party, which would not only destroy her premiership, not only would it open the door to Labour forming the next government, but it could destroy the Conservative Party as it did in the 1990s.
The rebel Tory MPs may even resort to a rare political leverage against the Prime Minister petitioning the monarch, and by extension, Her Majesty's government, to intervene. The rare political tactic, which either the House of Commons or House of Lords can lay, is known as the so-called humble address. Under parliamentary rules, a humble address can be laid by a group of backbenchers, as well as by the opposition, and the vote is binding on the government. But the story doesn't end here, as politicians and business figures are also ramming home the same message. Theresa May also feels the heat, as her Defence Secretary has threatened to bring her government down unless she commits an extra £20 billion to defence. Among a wide range of differences between Britain and the EU, the two important issues of the Irish hard border and the industry's passporting rights, remain as the main obstacles against Britain leaving the Union with minimal damage. The Irish figures seem to have toughened their language against Downing Street, with the Irish Taoiseach saying that it is not his job to help British Prime Minister Theresa May to resolve Brexit difficulties in her government. In return, London doesn't seem to be eager to deal with the issue, with the Northern Ireland Secretary also confirming there would be no UK proposal to solve the Irish border Brexit issue until next month.
Who voted for this Brexit? And they voted for it, in my opinion, they were deceived by their politicians who lied to them, made claims about the money that would be rolling back into the British Health Service, for example.
Fears of financial banks' exodus from Britain post-Brexit have already intensified. The head of the International Monetary Fund has warned that Europe and Ireland must prepare for an influx of financial firms after Brexit. Many firms are expected to relocate outside the UK if they lose their passporting rights after Brexit. Passporting allows a financial company authorised in one EU state to sell services and products in another.
Of making sure that whatever happens in the negotiations that go forwards, and we don't know how they'll play out, that they can continue to serve their customers. And so all the banks, international banks and indeed UK banks, are making contingency plans to make sure that they can carry on serving their customers across Europe in terms of looking at what operations they might have to move to other European jurisdictions.
Firms from the US, Canada, Japan and India are also worriedly lobbying the UK to avoid a disorderly EU Brexit. It is estimated that Britain risks £100 billion in trade, and the car industry has warned Theresa May there is no Brexit dividend for the business, with 860,000 jobs being put at risk unless the government rethinks its red lines in negotiations.
I think a second referendum on Britain's membership of the EU is unlikely. I personally don't think there should be a second referendum. I don't believe in referendums at all. Indeed, Harold Wilson and Margaret Thatcher did not believe in referendums. There are some subjects which are so complicated that you cannot expect the ordinary person to understand it and then to vote on it. That is why we elect politicians. We elect politicians to take difficult decisions on our behalf. But nonetheless, a referendum was held in June 2016. It was held by David Cameron for all the wrong reasons. He put himself and his party before country. But nonetheless, the referendum was held. The British people, by a narrow margin, voted to leave the European Union. And therefore, that is the result. I don't like the European Union in the slightest bit, but you can't hold a second referendum.
Well, I certainly would like to see a second referendum. I think that in many opinion polls that have been taken, it's almost 2 years now since the first referendum, and as I said to you, the British public were deceived. They were made false promises about how great it would be the day after Brexit, and yet all of these economic warnings are being ignored because basically, in my opinion, the British Tory party is in complete and utter turmoil. There are divisions within it. I think also those who are lobbying hardest for Brexit probably have vested financial, economic, personal interests in it succeeding. But in the last 18 months, most opinion polls show that the British public are now beginning to doubt the wisdom of their original vote. But the problem, of course, is that even though legally the referendum was only consultative, it had no legal binding. The Brexiteers within the Tory party and in other parts of the British establishment are saying, oh, we can't go against the will of the people. It would be anti-democratic.